Welcome back to the Two Blues podcast and to the first episode of Lone Watch. Now, this is a segment that I've been meaning to do. I've been wanting to do for a long time. It is incredibly overdue on this channel to talk through the players that are out on loan currently, how they're going, where they are, and what the future holds for them back when they return to Chelsea Football Club, hopefully next year. We will be splitting this into two parts. I wanted to do a breakdown, a deep dive on the academy as well. Realistically, I think we should do a video for the loan players and a video for the academy players. They both deserve the respect. They both deserve their dues. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's look at the players on loan for Chelsea this season, where they are and how they're getting on. Now, just before we start on the first player, I think it is worth mentioning, I won't touch every single player that is on loan at the moment. There are certain players that I expect to leave the club, like Hakim Ziyech, like Romelu Lukaku, which I will not comment on their loan moves. In terms of their development, it's not something I'm particularly interested about. This segment, this episode, this series will be focusing on the young players that I think have a lot of talent and a lot to give Chelsea. You know, they just need those loan spells to go very well. They just need the development, the first team minutes, the opportunities that they may not get in this Chelsea squad. And where better to start at the back? And to be honest, I was surprised at just the number of keepers, considering that Chelsea have been struggling to find a consistent and number one goalkeeper this season. We have 4 keepers in the under-21, 5 keepers on loan, including the 2 keepers in first 11. We've got 12 keepers at this club. I don't understand how we are in such a dire situation, or how we were in such a dire situation with no one to trust, but it looks increasingly likely that Kepa will be coming back at the end of the season. Obviously, you've got Lucas Bergstrom, you've got Gaga Slonina, you've got Eddie Beach, you've got Jamie Cumming. You have so many young keepers, but the one that I want to focus on is Gaga Slonina, obviously loaned out to Belgium, to KAS Eupen, and he is their first choice goalkeeper. Their goalkeeper actually had to leave in the summer when Gaga Slonina came in to take over, and he's done pretty well. I mean, he's started 27 games, I believe, in the league. You know, if you take a look at the table, they're not doing very well. They are shipping goals. I think it's 52 goals conceded in 27 games. You know, not very many clean sheets at all, but from what I've heard from Eupen fans, you know, he is not to blame. There is not a single finger to point at Gaga Slonina. Yes, he's had a couple of mistakes, a couple of saves maybe he should have made, but on the whole, it's not a Slonina issue. Eupen fans seem to think he's a very good shot stopper, which we already knew from Chicago. I have massive hopes for Slonina. And to be honest, I think this is a brilliant loan move. You know, he's only 19 years old and he's the first choice keeper in the top league in Belgium. It might not be the best, the most technical league in the world, but he's the first choice keeper for a top tier team in Europe, which I think is a big step. At 19 years of age, it's a big feat. Eupen are 14th out of 16th at the moment. They are dangerously close to the bottom of the table. But, I mean, I'm not looking at his performance in terms of how many clean sheets he's kept, how many saves he's made. I'm looking at this as a first-team learning experience, a big learning curve. This is the definition of being thrown in at the deep end for Gaga Slonina. And to be honest, from what I've seen, from what I've heard, I'm very happy with how it's going. Moving on to the defence, Bashir Humphreys, 21 years old, obviously featured for us in pre-season, and I was actually quite impressed with Bashir Humphreys. I thought, you know, if he was needed, definitely could have played a bit part role, you know, in this squad this year. As it turns out, you know, we have a surplus, we have an overload of centre-backs, of quality young centre-backs like Levi Colwill, Badiashile, Wes Fofana. We have so many centre-backs that are trying to push through, make their name, you know, stamp their claim, stamp their place on that first 11. But Bashir Humphreys, you know, much like Colwill, very versatile centre-back. And, you know, that leading on to that point, he hasn't even been playing centre-back for Swansea. He's been playing mostly at left-back, and he's been holding it down as well. I mean, he had a semi-successful loan at SC Paderborn the year before last. I think it was only 13 league games, but he's made 20-odd appearances for Swansea. You know, he's played on the left at centre-back. Looks very versatile. He's about as close to ambipedal as we're going to get as a centre-half. He can play with left or right foot. I think it's changed in the past. He was stronger on his right foot. He's come to Swansea. He's now stronger on his left foot. It's fantastic to see that we have a surplus of quality young centre-backs that are able to use each foot. And obviously, yeah, another great loan move, you know, for a player getting 20-odd games in the Championship. The Championship is very competitive. I'd say this year more so, even more so than recent seasons. You know, you look at the top of the Championship, there's 4 or 5 points separating the top 4 teams. Those playoffs are going to be very tough. And I know Swansea are mid-table at the moment, but it's very close. They're far closer to the bottom than they are the top. I think 30 odd points off the top, but only kind of 5 or 6 points off the bottom. But that being said, I don't think Swansea will go down. I think Bashir Humphreys will continue to get minutes, and I'm really, really happy with his development at the moment. I'm just praying that Bashir Humphreys isn't going to be another, Mark Gehi, Fikayo Tomori, another quality young centre-back that we develop, we bring up, we rear, and then we just sell off for FFP, because we've seen that with Livramento, Lewis Hall, so many quality young centre-backs that have come through the academy, and then we've then shipped off for a profit. I really don't want to see that happen with Bashir Humphreys. Onto a less successful loan move, though, and unfortunately, Tino Anjorin is not part of League One side Portsmouth's flying season at the moment. They are absolutely killing it in League One, 85 odd points already, but Tino Anjorin has only got 9 games all competitions, largely due to a big hamstring injury that's ruled him out of a big part of the season. I think he picked up the hamstring injury. I think it might have been the game after he scored his debut goal, or his first goal, sorry, should I say, for Portsmouth. And Tino Anjorin is a player that I think has a lot of talent. The only thing that slightly concerns me is he's now kind of pushing that age where he's obviously not a teenager anymore. I believe he's 22. He's kind of pushing that age where we are seeing players of that age in this Chelsea side push through and hold down first team position. Malo Gusto, 20 years old. You're seeing a lot of these players. Enzo Caicedo, 22, 23 years old. And my question is Tino Anjorin at that level? I don't think he is. And unfortunately, he's a player that I've been really, really excited about. And I have really, really high hopes for him. But when you put it into context and when you see where he is compared to other players, I feel like he's going to become a little bit of a Lucas Piazon, a little bit of a player who we always thought, what could be. He has massive potential. This guy is going to be an absolute star. And then, you blink your eyes and he's 27 years old. He's been playing in Belgium for the last 2 years. I'm kind of getting to that point where I think it might not happen for Tino Anjorin. But I'll be honest, I really, really still hope there is hope for him. I think there is still way back for him. I think he's a quality player, a flair, creative attacking midfielder. It's a massive shame that this loan move at Portsmouth hasn't worked out, but a big part of the season to go. I'm not sure how long-term this injury is or if he will get an extended run back in the squad before the end of the year. But, we can only hope. I think there is still time for Tino Anjorin, but that clock is very much ticking. But a player whose loan move has gone completely the other way, Omari Hutchinson for Ipswich, the 20-year-old. Let's just take a second and talk pre-loan. Omari Hutchinson was obviously with Arsenal. He was released. Chelsea managed to snap him up, and we were very, very excited. Arsenal fans were gutted that they lost him, and they were very, very salty that we had picked him up because they recognised what a talent he was. He was very, very direct, very good in the final third, despite his young age. He was a clinical finisher, great at creating chances, and his dribbling as well. He's got good crossing ability, great dribbling ability, and he pissed it last season. He was absolutely fantastic for the development squad. 8 goals, 10 assists in 25 Premier League 2 games. I think a championship move was the right move. A championship side was the next step up for him. And what he's doing, I mean, it took him a while to get his first goal, but I think he's now taken his tally to 5 goals. He's got 5 assists as well. He's building, man. 10 goal contributions in his first season in professional senior football. That's not bad. But he had a slow start to life at Ipswich. I was genuinely thinking he was going to go and tear it up. And obviously Ipswich tearing up the championship, up there with Leicester. Pretty much, I don't want to say guaranteed playoffs, obviously, as we said earlier, 3-4 teams in and around that conversation. But Omari Hutchinson is absolutely flying at the moment. As I said, obviously, February was his best month, was the month that he got recognised as well by the fans, by the Championship, got given the Player of the Month award. And it's so good to see a player of such quality kicking on after, a slightly worrying start. And another player who's looking for a turnaround is Andre Santos. Now, Andre Santos was one of 2 players I picked out in pre-season that I thought could have played a role in this Chelsea side. Both him and Cesare Casadei were good enough for me in pre-season. They both passed the eye test with flying colours. 19 years of age, Andre Santos is, and he's still captaining the Brazil under-23 side. Honestly, I thought both of them could have done a job. Both of them fantastic. I thought Cesare Casadei had a little bit more of that runner, that box-to-box, that 8 in him, whereas Andre Santos looked a little bit more mature, a little bit more calm, collected, a little bit better in terms of distribution, being able to orchestrate the game from deep. And I really, really thought I hoped he could have played a role in this Chelsea squad this season. Obviously, as it turned out, he went off to Nottingham Forest. Now, we were all very happy and excited when he first went to Forest. We thought it'd be a great move. They, as we should have expected them to, then went out and signed Ibrahim Sangare and a couple of other centre midfielders, which means Andre Santos did not get a look in at all. He got 7 Premier League minutes for Nottingham Forest in half a season against Liverpool. You know, Chelsea were publicly, and rightly so, absolutely fuming. I think Nottingham Forest, whether they had promised him a particular development plan or game time, you know, I understand that it's not their responsibility to develop and help players that aren't theirs. And obviously they're going to focus on the players that do belong to them first. But at the same time, you know, they shouldn't have taken him on loan if they were going to do what they did. That being said, you know, he's come back in January, gone straight out to Strasbourg, joining Angelo Gabriel. He's got 2 games there. He's already got more minutes. I think he's only 33 minutes in a couple of games, but he's already got more league minutes for Strasbourg than he did in the whole of the first half of the season for Nottingham Forest. And Andre Santos is a player I think just needs consistent game time. I think it shows. I mean, he's still getting picked for the Brazil squad, the CONMEBOL qualifiers for the pre-Olympics. You know, he's still getting picked as the captain for the under-23 side. He is still recognized globally as a fantastic young talent. And the fact he's 19, you know, gives him a little bit of leeway. It means he can have maybe 1 or 2 seasons where he doesn't have the biggest impact, where he doesn't play his best football, but still can, you know, keep going with that career path, keep going with that positive trajectory, that positive career progression. But there is no doubt that this first half of this season really, really stunted him, because what that would have done for him confidence-wise, not just talent-wise, you know, confidence mentally, that must have hurt him. And like I said, I genuinely, after seeing him pre-season, I thought he was good enough to do a feature, to do a job. You know, even if it was bit part, even if it was a rotation job just to fill in for depth, whatever it is, you know, we've recalled Cassidy in January. It might as well have just left him on loan at Leicester and kept Andre Santos. But as it's turned out, obviously we've recalled Cassidy, sent Andre Santos back. Cassidy, I think, was on the side of the positive loans. I think it was 25 appearances for Leicester, 8 league starts. You know, people were saying that he was crap for Leicester. He wouldn't have started 8 league games if he was crap. He wouldn't have got 3 goals all comps if he was crap. He wouldn't have played in 25 games if he was crap. He might not have been brilliant, but he's a 21-year-old kid playing in the Championship, playing his first or second or his first full season, sorry, shall we say. Obviously, he went to Reading last season for half a season. I think he played 13 games, but this is his first full professional season in men's football. So fair play to the kid for doing what he did at Leicester. And, you know, in the 5 minutes that I saw him last week for Chelsea, he looked fantastic. He looked like he was up for it. He looked physical. I mean, we've seen the kid. He's an anomaly. He's a very, very strange player because he's a box-to-box midfielder. He's an 8 all round. You look at him, his gameplay, his body type, his physicality, everything is a number 8. But then he goes and gets top scorer at the under-21s for Italy, who he's also captaining. The kid is a leader. The kid has got balls made of fucking stone. You know, we've got a real player on our hands here. I think Cassidy is someone that can step up to the pressure. And I think he enjoys it as well. I think he relishes the challenge. I really genuinely think that Cassidy is going to be a big, big player for Chelsea. I really hope it's not another one that we, you know, develop for a couple of years and flip out for 30, 40 mil. But like I said before, him and Andre Santos, I thought either of them were good enough from what I saw in pre-season to do a job for Chelsea this season. So I think he's got a big future at the club. Long may it continue. And, you know, I've been disappointed by his lack of minutes since he's been recalled. Obviously, he was recalled for depth. He was one of the few Chelsea players that was getting an extended run or getting good game time at the club that he was on loan at. It seems silly, seems strange for me and limiting for Poch to bring him back just to sit on the bench. But at the same time, if we could see a little bit more of Cassidy, I know he's cup tied this weekend. Maybe give Enzo Caicedo a rest in the Premier League next week. You know, we've got a couple of easier games that he should be able to get some minutes in. Now, back down to League One, and we're talking Harvey Vale, who went on loan to Bristol Rovers. Now, Harvey Vale is an attacking midfielder. He's always been an AM, a winger. He's always been, you know, goals, assists, creative player. So when Joey Barton was playing him left back for Bristol Rovers and comparing him, he had the audacity to compare him to Ashley Cole. I was thinking, what the fuck is going on here? Harvey Vale was a player that 2 years ago I was looking at like I'm looking at Castledy now. As this guy is the future of the club, you know, academy product. He's the next Mason Mount. He's the next guy to make his mark on the team. I really think Harvey Vale maybe should have got a couple more minutes, a couple more opportunities for the first team before he went out, but he still clearly needs development. Again, it's another player that's shown us this season that he's versatile in more than one position. And ever since Joey Barton got sacked at the end of October, he's been moved into a more attacking role. He's been utilised on the left or in the middle. And, you know, the assists, the goals have started to come. I think he's got 4 goals, a couple of assists, or maybe the other way round. It's not scintillating, you know, it's not brilliant reading. It's nothing near what he was doing with the development team or with the youth team. But still a very, very good prospect. You know, Harvey Vale is still only 20 years old. He started 24 games out of 33 this season for Bristol Rovers. He's getting good game time. It's another positive loan move for Chelsea. I think this will help his development. Maybe he'll be ready for a championship loan next year and then ready to integrate into the first team. But yeah, very strange loan move in terms of where he's been utilised. I know we talked earlier about Bashir Humphreys being used at left back. A couple of these players that we've sent out have been utilised in positions that they're not the most familiar with. But fantastic to see that Harvey Vale can play at left back. And I mean, I know he was obviously he's been switched to further forward now, but Joey Barton saw something. He had an extended run in the team. If we need him to play at left back in the future, surely he'll have that in his pocket. Now, unfortunately, we do have to move on to some less positive loan moves now, and we'll start with Charlie Webster with Heerenveen in the Eredivisie. Not really sure what's happened there. He scored on his first start and then got sent off after 58 minutes and hasn't started a single game since. So I don't know if the manager's just holding a grudge, if the manager's just particularly pissed off at that red card. I haven't seen the red card. I'm not sure what he did to get it. But he hasn't started a game since. Seems very strange considering he'd only played a couple of games before he scored. Obviously came on. I think he was playing on the wing or an attacking midfield. He hasn't got very many games. I think he's got 7 appearances, all comps this season. He's not a player that you hear very much about in terms of the youth at Chelsea. There are other players that are a lot more prevalent in the media. They get a lot more PR. But Charlie Webster's a good player. I think from what I've seen, particularly in the youth, he's very, very solid. I think he's more of a centre midfielder. I know he plays higher up. He plays as an attacking midfielder, but I do see, I don't think his dribbling ability, his crossing ability, his quality in the final third is up there with some of the other players that we've got. And we have a plethora of players. As Charms likes to say, we have a smorgasbord of attacking players in the youth setup. So I don't think we really need to overload those wings. And Charlie Webster, I feel, is a player that can drop back and play as a box-to-box, as an 8, as a centre midfielder, whatever you want to play him in that middle. I think he can do the Castledine role, be creative while having a little bit more discipline and control on the game. But whatever happens, we need to see him get some more minutes than he's got so far. And another player we need to see get more minutes is Armando Broja. Now, we were entertaining offers reportedly in January for around 30-40 mil from West Ham, from Brentford, from a load of clubs were reportedly interested in him. Even I think Tottenham at one point were sniffing around him. But he obviously went to Fulham in the end, who were linked for a permanent move, but decided to go for a loan instead. He hasn't started a single game yet. He got 1 assist, I think, in his last game against Wolves. But he hasn't really done anything, barely got any minutes. I think we're looking at, I think he's got to start 10 games this season or a 4 mil loan fee is incurred, which at this point I'm looking at, sit him on the bench for the next 10 games, get us that 4 mil, bring him back and develop him in the summer. Armando Broja is a player that I still think, and I still will maintain, although he's been poor for Chelsea when he's had the opportunity this season, I still think he has all the tools necessary to be a top striker in the Premier League. Whether it's for Chelsea, whether it's for someone else, I do not know. But I think he's a fantastic player. I think his pace is understated. He's got strength, aerial ability, finishing. His hold-up play needs a little bit of work, but we've seen at Southampton that he was able to score, able to create things from nothing. That was a terrible Southampton side that he was playing for. It was a pretty poor Vitesse side that he was playing for in Holland previously as well, but he got 10, 11 league goals for them. I'm pretty sure he got a similar number for Southampton as well. So we've seen the kid do it abroad and in the and in the Premier League. It's just whether he can bring that over to Chelsea. We've seen glimpses. I really, really like Broja, so I'm partial to him, and I'm hesitant to come out and say bad things about him because obviously, like I said, 22 years old, just come back from a big ACL injury this year, which very rarely players are the same that they were before. You've got to give him these mitigating factors. You have to give him a little bit of leeway, but at the same time, like I said with Tino Anjorin, it's a cruel game. And at 22 years old, you're looking to be at that make or break level where if you haven't really hit consistent first team Premier League levels, you're going to have to start looking at alternative options out the club. And it's not something I want from under Broja. I'd love Broja to stay, but I think, he's testing the owner's patience. He's testing the fans' patience. When you've got a player like Nicholas Jackson that misses what he does, but still comes out and has 9 goals halfway through the Premier League, there are a lot of other things to think about. We got David Washington. We got so many players in the youth system, McNeely, Stutter, Runham. We have so many quality young players that are 18, 19. You are looking at 22, 23, unfortunately, as that cutoff period. And David Datro Fofana was another young striker in a fairly similar situation, fairly similar boat with Union Berlin. He got very few minutes. He had a public bust up with the manager when he took him off. I think they had a club record of 9 defeats in a row. It was about as miserable as it could get. And he only scored his first goal for Union Berlin on the last game that he was there. He then got recalled to Chelsea and sent straight back out to Burnley. And it took him 2 games, or, I mean, in terms of minutes, it took him 50 minutes to score more goals for Burnley than he did for Union Berlin. He got an assist in his first substitute cameo appearance against Man City. And then the second game he played, the first home game for Burnley, he rescued them a draw. Single-handedly scored 2 goals to peg them back to 2-2. Single-handedly won on the point, literally became a club legend. How many club legends do Burnley have? He became a club legend that day. And he's already scored another screamer this week against West Ham. He scored 3 goals, and I think it's 5-6 games for Burnley. It's not fantastic returns, but Burnley, look at Burnley this season. Struggling, really struggling. And Fofana looks like he has that quality, and everything I've seen from him in this season, not just the hold-up play, the link-up play, he's got tech, bro. David Fofana has skills. He's got speed. He's got ability. He's got confidence. I like him. I really, really like him. And I know that he definitely needs a little bit more time, but the fact that he's doing bits for Burnley, and I'm seeing him hold up players like Saliba, send him for a hot dog. He's done bits. He's played against some good centre backs already for Burnley, and he's put in some good shifts against Man City. The assist, it was a fantastic assist. The goals were good against, and the goal the other week against West Ham was world class. The player's got talent. He's 21 years old. He's got slightly more mitigating factors, slightly more leeway than Broja as well. I see a player in David Datro Fofana, and I thought Union Berlin would have been a fantastic loan move for him with them having Europe this season. He only scored 1 goal in the Champions League. He only got 4 appearances. Not the greatest experience for him at the club as a whole, but Burnley seems to be a lot more lucrative, a lot more positive for him. So long may that continue. If he can get a few more goals before the end of the season, that'd be fantastic. But we'll drop back down a couple of leagues before we go abroad. And we'll look at Alex Matos, 19-year-old attacking midfielder who has gone to Huddersfield in January. He was touted as the guy that liked to travel up and down England and rate benches in the first half of the season, because as excited as I was to see him on the bench, he weren't getting fucking used. I think he got his debut for about 30 seconds. He played another 4 or 5 minutes in cameo bit part roles, but he didn't really get an opportunity with Chelsea in the first half of the season. But Huddersfield has been a lot more fruitful. He scored his first ever professional goal. He's got a couple of player of the matches, I think, against Sunderland and Southampton. He's put in some good performances. I think he's a player. When I saw him, the highlights of what he'd done at Norwich, obviously it's the development squad, the youth team, but he looked like he's got tech. He looked like he's got brilliant footwork. Look quite similar to Chukwuemeka in that he's got an eye for goal, very attacking, very skillful, but he's also disciplined. He's also got great distribution. He's got very good awareness of what's around him in tight spaces, but also able to kind of sit back, take a minute, control the game, spread the ball out wide. I do like that about Matos, and I do think he's got a big, big future at Chelsea. But another player in the champ that also, I do think he has a big future for Chelsea, potentially, but this season has just not gone the way I hoped for him. And that's Mason Burstow, 20 years old at Sunderland. I think it's 19 league games and just 1 goal. He's really failed to have an impact. He got a couple of appearances off the bench for Chelsea. I think he scored a goal in pre-season, his first goal for Chelsea. Got a goal got an appearance in the EFL Cup for us as well, a couple of minutes, but with David Washington, Fofana, Jackson, he was never going to stay. He was always going to go out on loan. I did think maybe he could have done it. I was expecting more, to put it simply. At a club like Sunderland, I think fairly decent level for Mason Burstow. Mid-table. He just come from a loan move at Charlton before that as well. Mid-table in the Championship is about where he should be cooking, really. For a player of his quality, I think we've seen enough to know that he's got good quality. He's got a good finish on him. He was great in the developments, great in the youth side as well last season. But yeah, just not seen that from him this season. And I'm wondering whether he might, like Dion Rankin, the next player that we're going to talk about, maybe need to drop down a league just to kind of get that confidence up, get a few more goals under his belt, because obviously it can't be good mentally for a striker to be playing 25, 30 games a season and coming out with 1 goal. They can't look at that and go, yeah, I'm happy with that. I've done well this season. That must take a little bit of a toll on him mentally. And obviously, 20 years old, we got to make sure that we nurture these players. There is a player, and every single one of these players that I've mentioned, discussed, there's a potentially excellent football player in every single one of them. But they just need the right development, the right amount of confidence, the minutes, the right management. I really see that with Burstow, not so much as some of the other wingers that I think, have unbelievable, bounds of raw talent, but just need to be managed correctly and refined to be a better professional. I think with Burstow, he's got a little bit more work to do, and maybe, like I said, maybe have to drop down a league. But I still see a player there. I think he's got a lot of potential. I just think we need to manage him correctly coming off this loan, because he can't be happy with how he's doing. And I just mentioned him very briefly there, Dion Rankin. He is the last player that we're going to talk about in England. He is with Exeter City on loan in League One. He's getting good minutes on the wings. It was a hamstring injury, I think, at the latter end of last season that kind of kept him out for a couple of months, might have been 2 months, but he returned the end of November, got a good run of 90 minutes games over Christmas, scored his first goal for the club on the 1st of January this season. And he's getting an extended run of the team. He's a player that I think is got great potential, like a lot of these other youngsters. He mainly favours the wings. Obviously, he's 21 years old, so he's got a lot of time to grow. Exeter, obviously League One, if you can put a good shift in there, good shift in the Championship next season, who's to say he won't be competing for a spot for Chelsea in the next couple of years? But I'll be very honest, with players like Diego Moreira, Angelo Gabriel, David Fofana, Kendry Paez, these players from abroad that we've invested a lot of money in, I do get the increasing suspicion that Dion Rankin might be let go. We might look to sell him on for profit in terms of FFP. He might not make the cut, but he's another, again, as an academy product, I'm partial to him. I am partial to wanting these guys to succeed. And if he can continue getting good game time for Exeter this season, no reason why he can't get a good loan move to a good Championship side next season. And no reason why he can't kick that on and contribute to this Chelsea side. But we touched on in there, Angelo Gabriel, arguably the most successful loan spell for Chelsea this season. And he hasn't played the most games. He hasn't got the most output. He definitely hasn't scored the most. I'm pretty sure he hasn't scored a goal for Strasbourg yet. But they absolutely love him over there. His talent is undeniable. They might be languishing in 14th. Their fans might hate Clear Lake just like we do, and they might be marching and protesting to get rid of the club. But Angelo Gabriel is one thing that they are not moaning about. Angelo Gabriel won, I'm pretty sure, Young Player of the Month in the first month he was playing. Came straight into that team, wasn't even starting immediately, and still got Young Player of the Month. His dribbling ability, second to none. He's a player, like I just referred to earlier, very, very raw talent. He needs the right man management. He needs to refine someone to refine, to work very, very closely on him, on his game, the final third, the end product. But he's got, I think it's 4 assists this season. The majority of them have been balls into the box. His crossing is getting better. He actually really reminds me of Noni Madueke. I think there are a lot of similarities between Angelo Gabriel and Noni Madueke. Not both because they're young, quality, pacey dribblers. They both have extremely good raw talent, but both need to work on their final third. Both need to work on their decision making. I think Noni is a little bit better, a little bit more refined in terms of his finishing. We've seen quality goals from Noni that we really haven't seen from Angelo Gabriel, particularly this season. But the fact that he's playing alongside Andre Santos now, fantastic. Them building relationships not only from Brazil, but also for Chelsea and at domestic level. But Angelo Gabriel, I think, is a player that he's got a big future at Chelsea, undoubtedly. We signed him from Santos before David Washington. He was the guy. He was the next Neymar he was touted as. And while I see potential for that in his dribbling ability and his skills and his flair, he's got a long, long way to go. A lot of work to do in terms of sorting out his final third, his finishing, refining that game, honing his craft, basically. But yeah, at the end of the day, he's a 19-year-old player. Is a kid, is a child doing bits, getting those Aiden Hazard accolades, Young Player of the Year, Young Player of the Month, whatever it is. I'd be very, very surprised if Angelo Gabriel didn't win Young Player of the Year for Strasbourg this season, and maybe even League One. I mean, there are some top players in League One, but Angelo Gabriel, he's pushing the envelope. Now, Diego Moreira, I can speak very briefly about because he did go on loan to Lyon in the first half of the season, but He was recalled in January and is now with the development squad. So I'm going to save that bit for my video that I do, where I do a full breakdown of how I'm seeing the academy right now, what I'm seeing from, or who I'm very impressed with, the players that I think deserve a call up or should be the next to get a debut. Diego Moreira will be part of that conversation. But there are just a few players that I do want to mention very quickly. Now, I'm not, as I said earlier, I'm not going to discuss players that I think are going to leave. And Lewis Hall virtually confirmed that Newcastle are going to activate that permanent clause. We're going to get 30 mil for him. Big shame. I think he's a fantastic player. And given the fact that he hasn't got that many minutes at Newcastle this season, I wouldn't have minded recalling him and keeping him as depth, as backup for that left back position. We're seeing that Chilwell's already and Cucurella still having injury concerns. We need a consistent left back. I do not honestly think either of them are the answer. And it's actually a dagger in my heart seeing how Tino Livramento is playing for Newcastle. I thought even though they were dire the other night when they played us, Tino Livramento was the best player in a Newcastle shirt. And I think he could really be doing a job in this Chelsea side. But Lewis Hall, again, a player I think could be doing a job in this Chelsea side, but we've chosen the profit. We've chosen to circumvent FFP instead of keeping on to a potentially fantastic player. Two other players that I don't expect to come back to Chelsea in the summer, Ziyech and Lukaku. Obviously, Lukaku seems to be flying for Roma. Really hope that they pick him up for about 30 odd million. And Ziyech, if we can get 10 million out of him from Galatasaray, I'd be very, very happy. Ian Maatsen, though, absolutely cooking for Borussia Dortmund. Need him back. Not going to talk too much on him because I do quite a lot of shorts on him. And league, he's putting in fantastic performances. They love him over there. The PR surrounding him is fantastic. And honestly, if we get rid of Ian Maatsen in the summer, even if it's 40, 50 mil, if we get rid of Ian Maatsen in the summer, I genuinely think it's going to be a big, big mistake. I've said so many times, Ian Maatsen is a fantastic, adaptable, versatile left wing back. He's so good going forward and defending. I think he gives so much more than Cucurella and also Chilwell in terms of availability being the best ability. When I watched him at Coventry, fantastic. When I watched him at Burnley, fantastic. He pissed it 2 seasons on the trot in the Championship, and then he came to Chelsea, did bits in pre-season. When he was playing in that attacking midfield role, he looked fantastic. He was linking up with Mudryk, with Jackson, with Nkunku. He looks brilliant. And then Premier League came around. Poch changed his system completely, didn't use Maatsen in attacking roles or at left wing back. I think he made one mistake earlier in the season when we played against Brentford. He lost the header on the halfway line and Webber went through. I don't think Poch trusted him after that. I genuinely think Poch binned him off after that mistake or lack of physicality. You can't really call it a mistake. He just lost a header. But ever since then, it was kind of a write-off for him. And I feel really, really bad for the kid because I do think there were so many opportunities that he deserved to get minutes in, but it didn't happen. And honestly, I think with every day that passes, it becomes less and less likely that we are able to keep hold of Ian Maatsen, which personally I think would be a big, big shame. But I did just want to kind of give him a quick shout out along with Lucas Bergstrom, Eddie Beach, Jamie Cumming, who make up 3 of the 5 keepers on loan. We're not going to talk about Mr. Arrizabalaga because he has done enough damage to this club as is. But that just about brings us to the end of our loan roundup, our loan watch. This was the first episode, the first time I've kind of got to do a deep dive on this. I will be doing a further deep dive, hopefully tomorrow, into the academy players. There are so many quality academy players that I think we need to talk about. Leo Castledine, Ronnie Stutter, Tyreek George, Donald McNeely, Samuel Smith, Achimpong, Frankie Runham, Jimmy J. Morgan, Dujuan Richards, Alfie Gilchrist, Jimmy Torinian, Michael Golden. You can make an 11 out of those 11 that could probably challenge Chelsea at this point. These youngsters are absolutely killing it. They are cooking. Leo Castledine, if you're watching, call Poch, man. Call Poch and ask him why you are not playing. Should be playing you, bro. Should be playing you. But we'll get more into that next time. I think that just about brings us to the end of our inaugural episode of Loan Watch. I hope you've enjoyed it. Obviously, it's been a little bit of a deeper dive than it will be in the future. Hopefully, when we do it a little bit more frequently, it'll be a week-on-week update. How did they play that week? Who performed? Who didn't? But yeah, hopefully you've learned a few things. I definitely did doing my research for this one. It was a comprehensive one. But yeah, appreciate everybody that's tuned in. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Follow at Two Blues Podcast on the Instagram and the TikTok. And we will be back tomorrow with Academy stuff. And Sunday, FA Cup quarterfinal. I've got a whole lot of content for you coming this weekend. Make sure you are tuned in. Make sure those notifications on. Thank you very much for tuning in. We out.